So continuing through the New Testament, and in particular following the correspondence of Paul to some of his churches, we find ourselves in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, which shows to us a fascinating little junction in understanding more of Paul's personal theology, and I think it's an encouragement to us. So the circumstances are a little bit complex because Paul had made definite plans to visit the church in Corinth, and then he gets word through correspondence that the church in Corinth are actually really upset with him and are not at all really looking forward to his visit and are turning against him in some way as the founding pastor of the church. So Paul writes back to them and says, listen, I was going to visit you, but now I'm actually going to just write to you to try and defuse the situation, and hopefully then my visit next time can be much more pleasant for all of us. The problem now, though, is that the church in Corinth used this information against Paul, and they say he claims to be an apostle, but now he's gone and changed his mind. One minute he's going to come and visit us, and the next minute he's changed his mind. And apostles surely wouldn't do that. Surely if an apostle made up his mind that he's going to come and visit, he would come and visit. So how come you're allowed to change your mind if you think that something's God's will and then suddenly it's not God's will anymore? And so they really played this pretty harshly against Paul, and then he writes to them in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, unpacking these different layers of correspondence and the tension that's between them as a community and as a leader. And Paul says to them, listen, I am an apostle, and I sincerely made plans to come and visit you, but then the circumstances between us seemed to change, so I sincerely changed my plans. And I don't just vacillate left and right, but rather when I make a decision, it's clear and it's earnest before God, and it's with a good conscience. And so his theology seems to allow him a sense of flexibility inside his understanding of God's will and God's plan for his life. And one of the ways that I've tried to sort of understand this and even teach this in the past is that Paul doesn't seem to look at God's will for his life as being a tightrope. One very, very meticulous step, in front of the other, and if you take a left or a right turn, or if you go a wee bit off target, then you fall and you're out of God's will and you've lost the plan, and somehow you have to then try and recover, or maybe you never recover. Paul doesn't seem to look at God's will for his life as this sort of tightrope, because let's be honest, a tightrope is a place of fear. There's high anxiety on a tightrope. But rather, Paul seems to portray his life and his discernment of God's will for his life more as a meadow, a place where there is liberty to find a path, but at the same time change path or move to the left or to the right without having a catastrophe and coming off the rails. So although this leads to more sense of perhaps ambiguity and even mystery, I think it's a more mature and realistic way of understanding God's will for our lives, because we're not robots. We don't always get the exact right decision first time, every time to be God's will, and if we step out of it, then suddenly we are forever fallen away from it. But rather, I think it gives us the opportunity to explore life, to explore God, to explore the options that are before us, and trust for God's providence and capacity and faithfulness to be in those circumstances, even if we take turns to the left and the right that we're too quick or too abrupt, or we shouldn't really have gone here or there if we make a decision about life and circumstances. It's not like we've ever put God in checkmate where he's out of moves. We see that consistently through the scriptures, that when his people take wrong turns, he finds ways of bringing them back to the better path, to the safer, greener pastures, to bringing them to a place of abundance and fruitfulness again, rather than just letting them flounder in the weeds and then counting them as having fallen off the tightrope, so then that's their chance gone. So I really enjoy Paul's sort of mature and confident perspective on this, because I think it gives us hope, and it gives us a liberty to live not with fear but with adventure, and with a confidence that even though perhaps we do take wrong turns, which we normally all do, then God is more than capable of meeting us there and leading us as the Good Shepherd to places that are the right pastures and the quiet waters to restore our soul and to often even untangle the messes that we find ourselves in. So there's an encouragement from Paul's interaction with the church in Corinth a couple of thousand years ago that I think is still fresh for us today. Till next time, peace.